George Bush and Bill Clinton would sit down there to shake hands with the black victims to comfort them in their filth. But before they could go down there, Barry Soweto, aka Barack Obama, who was in Russia at the time, was called from Russia. By the way, he was doing business for the Council of Foreign Relations, of which he and his wife are both members. Okay? And if you belong to the Council of Foreign Relations, you are only about the exploitation of Africa, period, because that's why it was established. He and his wife are members. He was called from Russia to come back to New Orleans to accompany. Now this is 05. This is August 05. Okay? He was called back to accompany George Bush and President Clinton. The last two and Obama go to New Orleans together to shake hands. Now my question to you is, why is it that a little known black senator from Chicago, and he's not from Chicago, he moved there, we'll get into that later. But why would a little known state senator from Chicago be told to go to New Orleans with the last two U.S. presidents? You do the math. It's because they chose them before you knew them. But the problem is we don't think. The propaganda of the media sweeps up black people every 4 years, and we fall for the same nonsense every 4 years. So if we thought that Bill Clinton was a black president, they knew if they gave you somebody who was a half Negro, you would really lose your mind. Right. You would really lose your mind. And by the way, Bill Clinton has been inducted in the Arkansas Black Hall of Fame. He's the first white person in history to be inducted in the Arkansas State Black Hall of Fame. Yes, he is. Show me a black person in the Jewish Hall of Fame, Italian Hall of Fame, Polish Hall of Fame, Anglo Hall of Fame, you won't find it. Arab Hall of Fame, Asian Hall of Fame, you won't find it. But when you go back to our history, be it slavery or colonialism, because not everybody suffered from slavery, but everybody went through white supremacy, one of the chief things that we've been taught that we never got out of, and the number one goal of slavery, colonialism, white supremacy is to turn the victim into a willing accomplice in your own extermination. Turn the victim into a willing accomplice in your own extermination. I read an article the other day. They said by 2050, white people will be a minority in America. Okay? By 2050, Hispanics and Mexicans and Asians will outnumber white people. So what? They have been a minority on the planet since the beginning of existence. What did it have to do with the power differential between Africans and Europeans? Nothing. Numbers don't mean nothing unless you put them to work. They have always been a minority. But who runs the economy? Nobody but them. White males are 46% of college-age students. 46, that's less than half. But they are 96% of the CEOs, 96% of the principals, 95% of partners at the law firms. So when you look at white supremacy, it might change shape, it might change form, but it never changes substance. It never changes substance. And the problem with Obama, with black people, is that we can't look beyond the surface of his skin tone. Nobody bothered to ask who dressed him up and put him out there. Are you not aware that this man in 12 years, which makes him the fastest of all time, went from a little known state senator in a heavy black district of Chicago running for the presidency? Running for the presidency. He's been in the Senate for 3 years. He's been running for president for 2 of the 3, which means he only been doing work for 1 year. What black man you know could run for president of the United States and have only been active as a senator for a year? Why is it in 2004 the Democratic National Convention gave Barack Obama the keynote speech? He was only a state senator. State senators never give keynote addresses at the political national convention. Not even the white ones. But he did it as the state senator of Chicago. Why? Because they chose him before you knew him. And by giving him the 04 speech, it guaranteed that he would beat Alan Keyes for the U.S. senatorial spot from Illinois, and then the rest was history. See, when Obama moved to Chicago, He tried to unseat former Black Panther Bobby Rush. Bobby Rush blew him out the water in the election. He told him he would spank him and then spanked him. In fact, he said something to the fact, who the hell does white boy think he is coming into my district? He don't know the first thing about black people. He was raised as a white man. And then he spanked him. So the Democratic Party stepped in and said, he's not going to make it if we leave it up to his own merit. So they gave him the DNC keynote. And so he didn't even have to worry about being a state senator no more, because in a few months he was running for U.S. Senator, the third in history. Now, when we look at the financial backing of Obama, you see that his #1 campaign contributor happens to be the only bank on Wall Street that hasn't floundered. Goldman Sachs has given Barack Obama more money than everybody else put together. Most of his contributions did not come from poor people on the street. It came from rich, white, old money. Rich, white, old money. Don't listen to what they tell you on CNN. CNN is owned by the corporations. You got to do the research. Why is Goldman Sachs the most powerful bank on Wall Street, the United States chief investor abroad? Why are they putting so much money behind this half-Negro? Why? Because they know that the families that run America have been eyeing Obama for the past 4 years, because they see something in him that would allow them to take white supremacy to the next level. Because black people in Asia don't think no more than we do. And black people in Africa don't think no more than we do. In fact, I gave this same speech in Nigeria 3 months ago, and they looked at me like I was crazy. You got Obama maniacs in Africa too, who think that if Obama is elected president, he's going to stop the World Bank and International Monetary Fund from stepping on Africa's throat. You got black people in America, although he hasn't said one thing about us this whole 2 years, he ain't mentioned black people. But we think that he's going to change the schools, even though schools are run by the state. We think he's going to do something about prison, even though prisons are run by the state. In fact, most of what affects you on a daily basis is state sanctioned, not federal. And there's something called states' rights that evolved during the civil rights era, where the government in D.C. is told to keep their hands off certain things. But even if he could, Barack Obama isn't interested in helping black people because he don't see himself as that. Biologically, he might be an African, but consciously, he's all European. And we fail to realize that. If you take out the fact that his father, who he never knew, was a Kenyan, you get a white man. Trained at the best schools. Grew up in a middle-class neighborhood. And when you read his 2 autobiographies, and most Obama maniacs have not, he tells you clearly that I'm not for affirmative action, I'm not for reparations, I'm not for an apology for slavery, which he reiterated last month in an exclusive TV interview. What black man could be against reparations, against an apology for slavery, and against affirmative action? To be against all three automatically necessitates that he's the enemy of his own race. Automatically. But the Obama maniac camp would say, give him some time. In fact, we're the only race of people who have been conditioned to think that it's okay for the leadership to sell you short. The only group, if Obama was an Asian, he would not have ignored his people this long, or something would have happened to him by now. If he was an Arab, it's impossible. Only with Negro leadership can you ignore your whole constituency and still be treated like a great person. At the acceptance speech on King Day, anniversary of the March on Washington, he called the homosexuals his brothers and sisters. Our homosexual brothers and sisters, as he said, are entitled to the same rights as everybody else. He talked about poor whites and how affirmative action doesn't help them. He talked about women and how they get shortchanged. He talked about Hispanics and how hate crimes against Hispanics have been going up through the roof. But he failed to mention that the #1 recipient of hate crimes in America has always been and continues to be black people. But it never comes out his mouth. Never comes out his mouth. See, I don't expect Obama to wave a fist. I'm not saying that. Of course you can't go out there and wave a fist, but you should speak to us as much as you speak to anybody else. We're not asking for more, we're asking for equality. But for a so-called black man to ignore his people for 2 years, not go to one black school, one black elementary school. The only black churches he goes to is the ones that already sold the hell out. What black context has he ever been in and you've seen him talking? One time he got caught in a community meeting in Florida, and a group of brothers jumped up and started shouting questions at him. What is in your program for us? And they got arrested and thrown out there. Only time he got caught. Because he has nothing to say to you or for you. And I will say this on his behalf. If they choose him, and 95% it looks like they will. If they choose him and he does nothing for black people, you cannot complain. Why? Because you never asked him a single question about his agenda for the race. Nobody asked Obama one question, any interview, letter, or nothing about what his plans were for black people. So when he gets in and does nothing, at the end of the day, technically speaking, he cannot be held accountable. He can literally say, I never promised y'all nothing. You can't put that on me. In fact, Tavis Smiley, who's an integrationist himself, but he got upset because Tavis invited Obama to one of the black town halls. He rejected it. Then he invited him on Channel 12 for that one-on-one interview for his talk show. He rejected it. In fact, many people believe the reason why Tom Joyner got rid of Tavis Smiley, because he had a talk show on Joyner's station, they say Tom Joyner got mad because Tavis Smiley kept on bad-mouthing Obama for not showing up on the black town hall meeting discussion. And he's an integrationist and he was pissed off. You see? But my point is, with presidential politics, when you study your history, is that no president in America has attempted to or has ever helped black people. In fact, the two names that you always get is Abraham Lincoln and JFK. Now, if you've ever read anything on either two of these white men, you'll see that they never cared about black people and never would have done anything for them unless they were forced to do so. Abraham Lincoln did not free a soul. The Emancipation Proclamation, the preliminary and the final, was issued to slaves in states that had already rebelled from the Union. That's like Russia telling Georgia to let your slaves go free when Georgia don't recognize them as being subservient to Russia. So basically it's empty language. The slaves are the ones who saved Lincoln and the Union. After the Battle of Gettysburg, even though they won it, they were exhausted. And so Frederick Douglass, Martin Delany, Henry Highland Garnett, Harriet Tubman, and others told Lincoln that if you don't let the Negro in, you're going to lose your whole damn country. And so they let the blacks in, and within a year, we had took care of the whole thing. In fact, even racist generals of the Civil War said, had it not been for the Negro, we would have lost this thing. Jefferson Davis of the Confederacy said that if it wasn't for them, they would have lost. So how could you free us when you were losing and we came to your aid? That makes absolutely no sense. But this is what we teach to our black kids, public school and charter. Public school and charter. Now, why am I saying that there's a chance Obama won't win, given the fact that Goldman Sachs, which is a manager of the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve is a privately owned bank. You understand? So you have a secret family backing Obama. And that's why Hillary could not have gotten the nomination. And she knew ahead of time she wouldn't have gotten the nomination because her husband, Bill Clinton, is a member of the Bilderberger family, which is another secret white financial family. So what you are watching on television is nothing but smoke screen. It has nothing to do with the real election. Let's go back to 2000. Al Gore versus George Bush. They throw out 18,000 black votes. And black people go crazy. Al Gore didn't say a word. But you went crazy. That wasn't even the issue, black people. Al Gore still had 500,000 more popular votes than Bush without the 18,000 black Florida votes. So why was he not president anyway? Because the Electoral College chose George Bush by 2 electoral votes. And he became president because he won the electoral vote, not the popular. The popular ain't never chose nothing in America. Never! When you go down to the Constitution Center, Market Street, and you do the tour to the room where they have all the signers hall, they got white statues of all the signers of the Declaration of Independence, most of whom were slave masters. There is a replica of the bookshelf that was in Independence Hall. Take a good look at the replica of the bookshelf that's in the Constitution Center. You will see Machiavelli's The Prince several times on there. Why would Machiavelli's The Prince be a famous read of the signers of the Declaration of Independence? Because political trickery is the essence of European politics. And they knew that when they created the Constitution, they had to make the people think that you was in control, while at the same time saving rule for the white power elite. And that's why in the beginning you had to be rich and a white male and a property owner to vote. Guess what? You don't get to the Electoral College unless you're a rich, white male property owner. It's never changed. All you have is what I call the illusion of inclusion. You got 40 million black people thinking that they have a say in something that's white. And you get people like Jesse, Messy Jesse, as Dr. Khalid would call him, got you thinking that if white people are split over a candidate, 40 million black people can determine who wins by putting a 40 million behind one candidate, assuming you're organized, which we're not. That's another discussion. But what he failed to realize is black people will never be allowed to select any leader of significance in America, whether you use 40 million votes or one. Because the essence of America in all of Europe, and this is just Europe's western extension, is white supremacy. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow. White supremacy is simple, but black people still don't understand it. You had a century of colonialism. You've had a half a millennium of white supremacy, a half a millennium of slavery, and we still don't understand white supremacy. It's simple. White people will always be on the top, and black people will always be on the bottom, regardless of who we put out front. In Philadelphia, you have your third Negro mayor. But has it resulted in an increase in jobs for black men? No. Has it resulted in an improvement in schools? No. Has it resulted in an increase in contracts for the talented temp who don't care about nobody but themselves anyway? No. Because Michael Nutter is the face on the white supremacy structure of Philadelphia. Like Obama will be nothing but the face on white supremacy of the country at large. And there is a paradox to this too. We got to understand that the ascendancy of the black elected official has concurred with the decline of the black community where they rule. Look at black mayors and lieutenant governors and a few governors that you've had, and wherever they win, the black people do worse. Why? Because when you have a powerless black face, there can be no cry of racism. And when there can be no cry of racism, white people can operate freely behind that black shield. And so if Obama wins, you will see more police brutality. If Obama wins, you will see more black men in prison. If Obama wins, you will see more HIV victims. If Obama wins, you will see more black males in prison. Because whenever you have the black face, there is the illusion of Negro control. And whenever you have the illusion of Negro control, white folks are free to do whatever the hell they want to do. And that's why under John Street, North Philadelphia and West Philadelphia was given back to the white people. And one thing you got to understand about white supremacy, they're very organized. What do I mean by that? When white people decided 10 years ago that they was going to take back over Philadelphia, they had to bring in the city, they had to bring in the school district, they had to bring in the prisons, they had to bring in the police. What am I saying? The incarceration of black men in Philadelphia coincides with the need for them to be taken off the streets to pave way for whites coming back home. Do you know that 2 years ago the school district of Philadelphia, and I know because I was still working with them, created a center city region? When the whites said that they were coming back, and Ms. Smith was a former educator, okay? They gave the white people a district of their own in center city and blocked the blacks out. And nobody talked about it. And nobody talked about it. So right now, in center city, what they use to influence whites to come back is to say your children can go to school and you ain't got to worry about the niggas. I'm giving you the facts. And what makes it so sickening is last week, I don't know if you heard about it, Daryl Clark, Councilman Clark, who John Street found on the street, fixed him up, cleaned him up, made him an assistant. And I know him well because when I came out of undergrad in '97, I was looking for a job before I went back for my master's. So I had the ward leader set me up with an appointment to meet with Daryl Clark at City Hall. He was, at the time, councilman for North Philly. He took over Street's district when Street became mayor. I'm talking to him about a job, and this man is telling me about, take care of your brother. Let me give you this flyer too. This one. This one. But anyhow, he's telling me why I shouldn't consider running for city council. I'm not interested anyway. I don't do that. But he thought I was coming to scope out his job and take it. But let me get to the point of my story. Last week, Daryl Clark woke up. He lived in North Philly because you're required to live where you represent. If they get rid of that law, none of your black elected officials will be in the hood. They're only there because they're required. He woke up and came outside, and his car was spray painted KKK with a swastika. I don't know if y'all saw it. It was on the front page of the Daily News last week. Daryl Clark, Councilman Clark, from that North Philly district, woke up last week and somebody spray painted KKK and a swastika on his car in North Philly. His friend who lives in Fishtown came outside his house. Guess what? Same thing across Broad. Same thing, same night. But my point is, getting back to white supremacy. White supremacy is not practiced on an individual basis. It's a group dynamic. So whether you are a total house Negro or totally committed to your race, the treatment is the same. My point being, even though Daryl Clark helped the white people take over North Philly, even though he gave Temple as many blocks as they wanted, they still, at the end of the day, view him as a nigga. That's right. And to prove it, the same people who he brought back spray painted his damn car in the middle of North Philly. Look at the irony of that. You sold us out for them, and they still did you dirty. And one thing that is so difficult to convince, particularly college-educated blacks, because most of my day is spent interacting with them, and that Negro population is probably the most interesting species on earth. Because they've been out of the hood for 4 to 8 years. 4 to 8 years, and in 4 to 8 years, Harvard and Penn and even Lincoln and Howard and Cheney, okay, because most of them were started with white money, and that's not a knock against the black college. I'm not knocking them. In fact, I'm speaking at Cheney next week, but I want to make it clear that when you rely on white money, even when you're an independent so-called black institution, you got to dance to the curriculum that they dictate. For example, Howard University in Washington, D.C. is the #1 recruiting center for the FBI and CIA for black people. Let me say it again. Howard University, which I love, is the #1 CIA and FBI recruiting black institution in America. More CIA and FBI agents come out of Howard University than any other school, black or white. So what I'm saying is, the reason we have these issues is because there's no independence about us as a people. None. In fact, I was reading the news on my phone today, and they were talking about white people and what they got to say about Obama. Now keep in mind, popular votes don't choose nobody, so that's irrelevant. But to get to the racism of the matter, they were talking about how 7 out of 10 Democrats are not going to vote for him simply because he's black. Simply because he's black. Now remember, he ain't claimed us at all for 2 years. But they still know what he is. We are the only people who think that if we kiss and dance and scratch, somehow they will forget the obvious texture of your skin. It's never happened in world history. In fact, if they forgot, they wouldn't have created AIDS and Ebola and West Nile and whatever else coming up down the street next week to get rid of you. They wouldn't have created Ritalin and Prozac and Strattera, all of which destroys the black male's ability to produce healthy semen in his testicles. So you give a black boy Ritalin at 3, and by the time he's 21 and ready to make a child, he can't. Because the drug destroys semen production. And that's coming directly from the Food and Drug Administration. But you go to any one of these schools, and I've worked in every one, and half the black boys in any classroom is taking some form of psychotropic medicine. Yes, it's called Nugenics.
When they started the ADHD, that diagnosis back in the 80s, that's when they started doing that shit. Excuse me, dog.
That's where the ADHD comes from.
So it's the Tuskegee experience.
It's the new Tuskegee.
That's right.
And it's worse than the first one. Because the first one had a stop date. The first one, you understand, nobody knew what they was up to. Everybody know what this is, and black mothers and fathers are still walking their kids on down there. See, when the community infrastructure breaks down, the enemies can invade. And you can easily get to the community by destroying its children. And so you get to the boy, you get to the girl, and the future is over. People are only as good as the seeds that they have, which makes the black woman the most important entity in the community. Because she is the first teacher of that child. And whatever she give that boy or that daughter, that's what they're going to give to the world. So if she raises them to be an integrationist, then that's going to be their thoughts for the rest of their life. If she raises them to be an independent thinker, that's what they're going to be for the rest of their life. But the problem is we don't invest in our women, we don't invest in our girls. We disrespect them, and we allow young men to disrespect them in front of our faces. In fact, one of the biggest reasons why young brothers have went crazy is because the older men are scared of their own damn sons. And I know it because I've seen it. I've been in schools where little teeny-weeny boys curse their big black fathers out in front of white people. I ain't never seen that growing up. My grandfather would have took his cane and beat me. They will curse their fathers out. Now, whenever a boy can rebel against his father's authority like that, community is over. Because now the children run the neighborhood. And the drug dealers run the neighborhood. In fact, I know at least 20 blocks where the drug dealers pay for everybody's prom, and they play for the block party every year. And if you're running late on your gas or electric, they'll flip it. And I don't want to demonize the drug dealer. Why? Because he is only trying to survive in the social economic order in which he was birthed. And so we got to understand that in the black community, there is a political food chain. Everybody is a victim and everybody is a perpetrator.